Triplets sold their toys to pay Mum's hospital bill. Then a stranger changed everything. The small house at the end of Maple Street was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Inside, the kitchen clock ticked loudly over the sound of water dripping from a leaky faucet. In the cramped living room, 3 identical boys sat cross-legged on the floor, their eyes red but determined. Liam, Noah, and Ethan, 7-year-old triplets, were sorting through a large box of their most treasured possessions. Each toy brought a memory. The red fire truck with chipped paint was from their 5th birthday. The plush bear with one eye missing had comforted them on countless nights, and the Lego spaceship, now missing a wing, had taken weeks to build. But none of that mattered anymore. Their mom was in the hospital and the bill had arrived that morning, an amount their little minds couldn't fully grasp, but instinctively understood was impossible. Liam, the oldest by 6 minutes, clenched his jaw as he held up a worn action figure. "We have to sell everything, all of it." His voice didn't waver. Noah nodded silently, eyes brimming with tears he refused to let fall. Ethan, the gentlest of the 3, hesitated as he reached for his favorite robot, the one their mum had saved months to buy. He pressed it to his chest one last time before placing it in the box. They didn't have anyone else. Their dad had vanished before they were born, and neighbors mostly kept to themselves. Their mom, Rachel, had worked 2 jobs, barely sleeping, just to keep food on the table. Now, she was in a hospital bed after collapsing at her 2nd job. The diagnosis: severe exhaustion, malnutrition, and a heart condition that needed urgent surgery. The triplets had overheard the nurses talking. They knew it was serious. "We'll sell them in front of the grocery store," Noah suggested. "People go there every day." Ethan looked uncertain. "But what if no one wants them?" Liam stood up, determination in his voice. "We'll make them want them, for Mom." That afternoon, they packed the toys into a cardboard box, scribbled a sign with crayons, "Toys for sale to help Mom," and walked hand in hand to the corner store. They didn't know it yet, but that walk would change everything. Outside the store, they spread the toys on an old blanket. Curious shoppers slowed down. Some smiled sympathetically, others walked past. The boys didn't beg. They just stood there, hopeful eyes scanning each face, waiting for someone to care. Then a man in a long coat stopped. He looked at the sign, then at the boys. His expression shifted from confusion to something unreadable. He knelt beside them, picking up the one-eyed bear. "Why are you selling this?" he asked gently. Liam looked him in the eye. "To help our mom. She's sick. She needs surgery, but we don't have money." The man blinked slowly, his voice thick. "What's her name?" Noah answered softly, "Rachel Carter." The man froze. The name hit him like a punch to the chest. For a long moment, the man said nothing. His fingers tightened around the worn fabric of the bear, the years suddenly collapsing in on him like a wave. Rachel Carter. It was a name he hadn't heard in nearly a decade, but it haunted him every night. The man's name was Daniel Whitaker, and once, long ago, he had loved a woman named Rachel. He looked at the boys again, really looked this time. Their light brown eyes, the dimple on the left cheek when they smiled, the same shade of sandy hair. They looked familiar, too familiar. "How old are you boys?" he asked, trying to steady his voice. 7, Ethan said. "We'll be 8 in October." Daniel felt his knees weaken. October. That was the month he'd left town, scared, stupid, and ashamed. Rachel had begged him to stay, to be a father, but he hadn't believed he could be good at it. He'd walked away from her, from the future they'd talked about. He thought she'd moved on. But now, standing in front of these 3 boys who looked like echoes of his younger self, a terrible, beautiful truth began to form. Liam's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Do you want to buy something, mister?" Daniel swallowed hard. I might." He reached into his coat and pulled out his wallet, heart pounding as he thumbed through the bills. He handed them a $100 note. "I'll take this bear." The boy's eyes widened. "That's too much," Ethan said, holding it out. Daniel shook his head. "No, it's worth it." He turned the bear over in his hand, brushing dust off the remaining button eye. His fingers trembled. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Does your mom ever talk about your dad?" Noah hesitated. "Not really. She says he left before we were born, that he was scared." The words hit Daniel like a blade. He closed his eyes, nodding slowly. "She's right," he whispered. There was a silence between them, heavy with the weight of things unsaid. Daniel's mind raced. This couldn't be coincidence. The timeline, the name, their faces. He needed to be sure. "Where is your mom now?" he asked, his voice gentle but urgent. "In Mercy General," Liam replied. "Room 213. Daniel stood abruptly. "I have to go. But I'll come back." He turned, then paused. "Don't sell any more toys, not yet." Before the boys could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. The triplets exchanged confused glances. "That was weird," Noah muttered. "Do you think he knew her?" Ethan asked. Liam stared in the direction the man had gone, eyes narrowed with something deeper than curiosity. "I think he did." And back at Mercy General, Rachel Carter lay unconscious, unaware that the past she thought she'd buried was now walking toward her hospital room with a storm of memories close behind. Daniel's heart pounded as he weaved through traffic, headed straight for Mercy General. The streets of the city blurred around him, his thoughts loud and chaotic. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles pale. It had been years, too many years. He never thought he'd see Rachel again, let alone discover he might have children, 3 of them. Triplets. The idea both terrified and ignited something in him. Guilt clawed at his chest with every passing streetlight. He had left, walked away. He'd been 22, broke, overwhelmed, and too cowardly to admit how much he loved her. And now she was in a hospital bed, sick, and her sons were selling toys to save her life. He barely remembered parking. He stormed into the hospital lobby and went straight to the front desk. "Rachel Carter," he said, "room 213. The nurse looked up from her clipboard. "Are you family?" He hesitated for a beat. "Yes," he said. I'm her... Just tell her I'm here. Please." She raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Second floor, take a left." Daniel didn't wait for the rest of the directions. He took the stairs 2 at a time and walked briskly down the hallway until he found the room. He stopped outside the door, his hand hovering over the handle. Through the glass panel he could see her, pale, thinner than he remembered, hooked to monitors, her chest rising and falling in slow, fragile movements. His throat tightened. Rachel. He stepped inside quietly. The room smelled of antiseptic and fear. He moved to her bedside and sat down, staring at her face. The years had softened some features and sharpened others. She looked tired, worn. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Rachel," he whispered. "It's me, it's Daniel." Her eyes fluttered open, groggy from medication. It took her a few seconds to focus, but when she did, a jolt of recognition spread across her face, and then disbelief. "Daniel," she croaked. He nodded, trying to smile. "Yeah, I'm here." Tears welled in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I saw the boys," he said. "Outside the grocery store, selling their toys. Rachel, are they mine?" She looked away, pain flashing across her face. "You don't get to ask that now." "I know," he said quickly. "I know I don't deserve anything. But I had to know." She turned her face back toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, they're yours." The words hit him like a wave, beautiful and brutal all at once. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. I should have stayed. I should have... God, Rachel, I was such a coward." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You were." Daniel sat there, helpless, the silence between them thick with everything they'd lost. But just as Rachel opened her mouth to speak again, the monitor beside her let out a warning beep. A sharp one, too fast, too irregular. Daniel shot up. "Nurse!" he shouted. Rachel gasped, clutching her chest. Within seconds, a team of nurses and a doctor rushed into the room. Daniel was pushed aside, his heart thudding in his ears as he watched the chaos unfold. Rachel's body jerked slightly as the machines beeped more frantically. "BP dropping," someone called out. "We're losing her." "No, no, no," Daniel whispered, backing into the wall, helpless. He gripped the door frame, breath shallow, eyes fixed on Rachel's face as her body trembled under the weight of her failing heart. He felt frozen, like he was watching her slip through his fingers for the second time in his life, and this time he might not get a second chance. "Administer 5 cc's now." "Charging. Clear." The sharp sound of a defibrillator echoed in the sterile room. Her body lifted off the bed with the force, then collapsed back down. "Again!" Daniel turned away, unable to watch, his fists clenched, eyes burning. The image of the boys, those brave little boys, flashed through his mind. He thought of Liam's steady voice, Ethan's tenderness, Noah's quiet strength. They didn't deserve to lose their mother, not like this, and he didn't deserve to lose her again. After what felt like a lifetime, the beeping slowed into a steady rhythm. One of the nurses exhaled deeply. "She's stabilizing." Daniel turned, breath caught in his throat. Rachel's chest rose and fell evenly now. The doctor adjusted the IV and nodded. "She needs surgery as soon as possible. We've bought her a little time, but not much." As the medical team filtered out, one nurse lingered. "Are you family?" she asked again, this time more gently. Daniel looked at Rachel, then back at the nurse. "Yes," he said, "I am." "She's lucky. Most people don't make it through the second episode." The nurse paused. "If she doesn't have that surgery within the next 48 hours, Daniel didn't let her finish. "She will." But as the nurse walked out, the weight of the situation settled heavily on his shoulders. Rachel was stable, but not safe. The cost of the surgery was enormous. He remembered the boys selling toys, trying to save their mother's life $1 at a time. His chest tightened. He couldn't let them carry this burden alone. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Jack, it's me. I need to cash out the account. All of it." There was a pause on the other end. "All of it? Dan, that's your entire—" "Do it, I'll explain later." He hung up before he could second-guess himself. That money had been for a new business, a clean start, but none of that mattered anymore. Not if it could save Rachel. He returned to her bedside. Her eyes fluttered again. "Daniel," she murmured, barely audible. "I'm here," he said, taking her hand. "And I'm not leaving this time." But outside the door, a shadow moved. A woman stood watching through the small glass pane, mid-30s, stylish and holding a file. Her lips curled into a smirk. She turned and walked away. She knew who Rachel was, and she knew exactly who Daniel was too. Outside Mercy General, the triplets sat side by side on the cold concrete, the cardboard box of toys between them now half full. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, but the boys didn't move. Customers came and went from the grocery store, a few sparing glances or offering coins, but most just walked by. "Do you think he'll come back?" Ethan asked quietly, legs pulled up to his chest. Liam didn't answer right away. His eyes were locked on the street corner, the same spot where the man in the coat had disappeared hours earlier. "I don't know," he finally said, "but I think he meant it." Noah pulled out a small paper bag with the single sandwich they had split for lunch. "I hope Mum's okay," he whispered. "I hate not knowing." "We're doing our best," Liam said, but even his voice lacked its usual certainty. Suddenly, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The boys tensed as the door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, elegant, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a sharp burgundy suit and high heels that clicked on the pavement. In her hands was a folder, thick, worn, and marked with a legal emblem. She knelt before the boys, giving them a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be Liam, Noah, and Ethan." The boys looked at one another, startled. "Who are you?" Liam asked, instinctively stepping in front of his brothers. "I'm Vanessa. I work with Family Court," she said sweetly. Your mother listed me as an emergency contact a long time ago. I heard what happened. Ethan's eyes widened. Is she okay? Vanessa hesitated for just a moment. She's stable for now. But there are complications. She didn't have insurance, and because there's no legal guardian available while she's unconscious, well, the hospital called us. Liam's jaw tensed. What does that mean? Vanessa placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice low and soothing. It means you boys need to come with me just for tonight. It's protocol, somewhere safe until we can sort this out. Noah stood, his face pale. We can't leave her. Vanessa's smile sharpened just slightly. I'm afraid you don't have a choice. Behind her, 2 uniformed officers appeared from the vehicle. Liam looked at them, then at his brothers. His chest rose and fell with quick, shallow breaths. We're not going anywhere, he said. But Vanessa's eyes sparkled with something darker, something planned. You will, she said softly, almost kindly, because someone's about to make a very strong case that your mother is unfit, and that your father's sudden reappearance might not be the miracle you hoped for. The officers stepped forward, and from the hospital's entrance, Daniel burst out, breathless, just in time to see his sons being led away. Daniel sprinted across the parking lot, his coat flapping behind him, eyes locked on the scene unfolding in front of the grocery store. His heart slammed against his ribs as he saw the triplets, his triplets, surrounded by 2 officers and a woman he didn't recognize. They looked small, terrified, clutching the box of toys like a life raft. Hey, Daniel shouted, what the hell is going on here? Vanessa turned slowly, her smile smooth and unshaken. You must be Mr. Whitaker. Daniel stopped a few feet away, fists clenched at his sides. Who are you? Why are there cops taking them? I'm Vanessa Morris, Child and Family Services. I'm responding to an emergency welfare call regarding the Carter children. She tapped the folder she held. Standard procedure when a parent is incapacitated, without a formal guardian on file. Daniel looked at the boys, Liam's arms outstretched protectively in front of his brothers, Noah's lips trembling, Ethan clutching his backpack so tight his knuckles were white. They don't need a guardian, they have me. Vanessa arched a brow. You? There's no record of paternity, no contact in 8 years. You disappeared before they were born, Mr. Whitaker. The state has no legal reason to believe you're the father. Daniel's breath caught. Rachel confirmed it today, in the hospital. She's unconscious now, and there's no notarized statement. Vanessa's voice was silk wrapped around steel, and frankly, even if you are the father biologically, you abandoned them. Legally, you're a stranger. Daniel took a step forward, his voice fierce. I'm not a stranger. I'm their dad. Liam suddenly cried out, We want to stay with him. Vanessa's lips thinned. That's not up to you, sweetheart. Daniel felt rage bubbling under his skin. You're not taking them. One of the officers stepped between them. Sir, unless you have custody paperwork, I need you to stand back. Daniel's jaw locked. This isn't right. Vanessa lowered her voice just enough for him to hear. You should have stayed gone, Daniel. Some things can't be fixed. He stared at her, confused. What does that mean? But she turned without answering, signaling the officers to proceed. The triplets were gently urged toward the back seat of the waiting vehicle. Liam resisted, tears streaming down his cheeks. We didn't do anything wrong. You're not in trouble, one officer said softly. This is temporary. Daniel stood frozen, helpless, as the door shut with a heavy thud. The car pulled away, taking his children, his sons, out of sight. He didn't realize he was shaking until his phone buzzed in his hand. A message from Mercy General. Rachel Carter is declining rapidly. Prepare next of kin. Daniel stood rooted to the sidewalk, his breath fogging in the early evening air as the tail lights of the car carrying the boys disappeared down the road. His thoughts screamed at him to move, to do something, but his legs refused. His phone slipped from his hand, hitting the pavement with a crack that echoed louder than it should have. He didn't notice, not until the nurse's message echoed again in his mind. Rachel. Snapping back to life, Daniel grabbed the phone, barely registering the shattered screen, and took off running. He burst through the hospital doors moments later, chest heaving as he barreled toward the nurse's station. "Rachel Carter," he gasped. "Room 213, I need to see her. Now." The nurse behind the desk recognized him instantly, her expression grave. "She's being prepped for emergency surgery." The last episode weakened her further than we expected. Dr. Singh is doing everything he can. "I need to see her," he said again, voice breaking. "Please." She hesitated, then nodded toward a side corridor. "She's still conscious, but not for long." Daniel didn't wait for permission. He ran down the hallway and pushed open the door to find Rachel lying pale and still, hooked up to even more machines than before. A nurse adjusted an IV bag beside her, but stepped away as Daniel approached. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of his footsteps. "Daniel," she whispered. "I'm here," he said, sinking into the chair beside her. "I'm here." Her voice was barely audible. "The boys." "They took them, Rachel. CPS, some woman named Vanessa. She claimed she had paperwork and—" Rachel's eyes filled with panic. "Vanessa Morris. You know her. She's—" Rachel coughed, her whole body trembling. "She's from my past. She was my sister's friend. She hated me. Thought I stole everything from her. Even before you—" Her eyes locked on his. "She'll use the system to keep them, to hurt me. You have to stop her." Daniel reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "I will. I promise. But you need to make it through this surgery first." She nodded slowly, eyes swimming with tears. "If I don't—" "No," Daniel said fiercely. "Don't say that." "I need you to protect them," she whispered. "You're their father, Daniel. They need you. Promise me." He leaned closer, forehead touching hers. "I swear to you, Rachel, I will bring them back. I will fight for them. And I won't let you go either." A nurse stepped in. "Mr. Whitaker, we need to take her now." Rachel's hand slipped from his as they wheeled her toward the operating room. Daniel stood in the empty room staring at the now vacant bed. His children were in the hands of someone who wanted to destroy everything Rachel loved, and now he had less than 48 hours to prove he was their father and save the only woman he ever loved. The next morning, Daniel stood outside the county courthouse, bleary-eyed and unshaven, a folder clutched in his hand. He hadn't slept. After Rachel was taken into surgery, he'd spent the night scouring through every legal document he could find, pulling contacts from his past life as a paralegal intern, desperate for guidance. The boys were somewhere in the system now, possibly with a foster family, or worse, already being shuffled into a longer-term placement. He couldn't let that happen. Inside the courthouse, the hallways smelled like old paper and bureaucracy. He followed the signs to the family court office and approached the front desk. "I need an emergency custody hearing," he said. "Today." The clerk raised an eyebrow. "You can file, but it usually takes—" "No," Daniel interrupted, setting down Rachel's signed hospital intake form, the paternity affidavit he'd managed to retrieve from a state archive, and a notarized letter from Rachel's doctor confirming her prior statement of his identity as the boy's biological father. "This is an emergency. Their mother is in surgery. The woman who took them has a conflict of interest. Her name is Vanessa Morris." The clerk scanned the documents, her eyes pausing on the letter from Dr. Singh. She tapped her keyboard, her brow furrowing. "Vanessa Morris isn't listed as a state social worker. She's private." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, private?" "She's contracted, rare. Usually only happens when someone with influence pulls strings." Daniel's pulse quickened. "Can you see where the kids are now?" The clerk typed something into the system, then frowned. "It says temporary placement at 118 Glenridge Avenue. That's not a foster home, that's a private residence." Daniel leaned in. "Can I get the name?" She hesitated. "I'm not supposed to—" He slid a piece of paper across the counter. "My contact information. If anything changes, if anyone even breathes on that case, call me." Moments later, Daniel was in his car, driving fast toward Glenridge Avenue. The address led to a large, immaculate house surrounded by a manicured lawn and hedges so precisely trimmed it looked unnatural. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a cage dressed up as a castle. He knocked. No answer. He rang again, and just as he turned to leave, the door creaked open. Liam stood there, his face lit up. "You came." Daniel knelt, arms outstretched, and Liam ran into them without hesitation. "Where are your brothers?" he asked. "In the basement," Liam whispered. "She made us stay there when we got here, said we'd get in the way, but I snuck out." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Get them. Quietly. We're leaving." But before Liam could move, a voice echoed from inside. "Going somewhere, Mr. Whitaker." Vanessa stood at the top of the staircase, arms crossed, lips curled into a smug smile. "You're trespassing," she said. Daniel stood tall. "You're impersonating a government official." Her smile widened. "Prove it." Daniel's fists clenched, but he kept his voice level. "You're not a licensed social worker. The clerk confirmed it. You're operating outside of protocol, Vanessa. If I report this, you'll be looking at fraud and kidnapping charges." Vanessa descended the stairs slowly, her heels tapping sharply against the polished wood floor. "You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You abandoned those boys before they were born. There's no custody order, no court ruling. You're nothing but a ghost trying to crawl out of his past. I have signed documentation from Rachel naming me as their father," Daniel shot back. "And now I know you're exploiting a system you were never part of." Vanessa tilted her head, unbothered. "I didn't do anything illegal, not technically. I was listed as a backup emergency contact years ago when Rachel didn't have anyone else. That gave me just enough legal access to get temporary custody until the court sorts it out." "You manipulated her," he snapped, "and you're doing it again to her kids." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "I didn't manipulate anyone. Rachel always played the victim, always got the love, the sympathy, even from you." Daniel froze. "What?" "Oh yes," she said, stepping closer. "You never even noticed me, did you? Always mooning over sweet, perfect Rachel, even when I was right there, helping her, watching you two." He stared at her, disbelief mixing with a cold, dawning realization. "You did this out of jealousy." She shrugged, feigning indifference. "Call it what you want, I call it balance, and maybe those boys will be better off somewhere else, somewhere they don't live with the shadow of a mother who broke down and a father who ran." Daniel took a step forward, fury etched in every line of his body. "You don't get to decide what's best for them. You don't get to punish children for something that happened between adults." Vanessa blinked once, slowly. "You'll never get custody without a fight." Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket. "Then let's fight." He turned the screen toward her, audio recording still running, her entire confession caught in chilling clarity. Vanessa's face went pale. "You've got 30 seconds, he said, voice like iron. "Bring them to me, or I call the police." From the hallway, tiny footsteps echoed. Noah and Ethan appeared, eyes wide, holding each other's hands. Daniel opened his arms and they rushed to him, burying their faces in his chest. He looked back at Vanessa one last time. "You can't erase the truth." He turned and walked out the door, holding all three boys close. But just as they stepped off the porch, Daniel's phone buzzed again. A voicemail from the hospital. He played it. "Mr. Whitaker, this is Mercy General. Rachel is out of surgery, but there's been a complication. You should come. Now." Daniel didn't wait. He buckled the boys into the back seat of his car with shaking hands, his heart a frantic drumbeat in his chest. "Hold on," he told them. "We're going to see your mom." The drive to the hospital was a blur of red lights and whispered prayers. The boys sat silently, sensing the tension in their father's voice, clinging to one another. Liam held Noah's hand, and Ethan kept his eyes on the road ahead, refusing to blink. As they pulled into the parking lot, Daniel didn't bother locking the car. He lifted Ethan into his arms and gripped Liam and Noah's hands tightly, rushing through the sliding doors of Mercy General. The nurse at the front desk recognized him instantly and stood before he even spoke. "Come with me," she said quickly, her voice low. They moved her to the ICU after the operation. Daniel's throat dried. But she made it through the surgery, right? She did, the nurse said cautiously, leading them down a corridor. But there was unexpected bleeding. They had to induce a medical coma to stabilize her. He stopped walking. Coma? The nurse turned to face him fully. It's temporary, but critical. Her body is extremely weak. The next 48 hours are everything. The boys were quiet, confused, sensing danger but not fully understanding. Daniel knelt before them at the ICU doors. "Boys," he said, his voice trembling, "your mum's very sick right now. She's not awake, but she can still hear us. We need to be strong for her, okay?" They nodded, eyes wide. Inside the room, Rachel looked impossibly small beneath the blankets. Tubes ran from her arms and nose, monitors flashing quietly beside her bed. The rhythmic beeping was both comforting and terrifying. Daniel brought the boys to her bedside. Liam stepped forward first, his voice shaky. "Hi, Mom. We sold the toys, but we didn't have to sell the robot. Mr. Daniel helped us. He bought the bear." Ethan touched her hand softly. "Please wake up, Mommy. We need you." Noah couldn't speak at all. He just rested his head against her arm, eyes full of tears. Daniel stood behind them, his own tears slipping silently down his face. "Rachel," he whispered, "you're not done. Not yet. They need you. I need you." He stayed with her long after the boys had fallen asleep in the corner chairs. Nurses checked in and out quietly. The night passed slowly, every minute stretching like an hour. And then, just before dawn, Rachel's fingers moved. It was a small twitch, barely perceptible. But Daniel saw it. He leapt to his feet, clutching her hand. "Rachel!" Her eyelids fluttered. He pressed closer. "It's me. We're here. You're safe." Her eyes opened just a sliver. Her voice, weak and raspy, broke through the silence. "You kept your promise." Daniel choked on a breath. "Always." But before he could say more, a figure appeared at the ICU door, a doctor with a clipboard. And a sheriff's deputy beside him. The doctor's face was grim. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, "we need to talk. It's about Rachel's condition and her future care." Daniel stood between the hospital bed and the doorway, shielding Rachel as though instinct alone could keep more bad news from reaching her. Behind him, the triplets were still asleep, curled up together on 2 chairs and a blanket from the nurse's station. Rachel blinked slowly, still groggy, her fingers twitching in his grasp. The deputy remained silent, but the doctor stepped forward, voice low and measured. "She's stabilized, but the operation revealed more extensive damage to her heart than we anticipated," he said. "We were able to stop the bleeding, but the muscle itself, it's severely weakened." Daniel looked at Rachel, whose expression was unreadable, half awake, half drifting in and out of sedation. "What does that mean?" "She'll recover," the doctor said, "but she'll need ongoing care. Cardiac rehab medications, a pacemaker eventually, and she won't be able to work for months, possibly longer." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "My job, I'll lose both." The doctor's voice softened. "We'll provide documentation, but realistically, yes. You'll need someone to support you for quite a while." Daniel straightened, jaw tightening. "She's not alone." "That brings us to the second issue," the deputy interjected, stepping forward with a tablet in hand. "There's a petition filed against both of you regarding the boys. It claims a history of abandonment by Mr. Whitaker and medical negligence from Ms. Carter due to economic hardship." Daniel's heart stopped. "She was working 2 jobs to keep them fed. That's not negligence." "I agree," the deputy replied carefully, "but the system doesn't always see it that way. The complaint came from Vanessa Morris." Rachel's weak voice rasped behind him. "She's still trying." Daniel turned to her. "I recorded everything. Her threats, her admission. I'm taking it to the judge this morning." The deputy raised a brow. "If you have that, it changes things." "I do," Daniel said. "I also filed for emergency guardianship. I just need the court to move fast." The doctor looked between them. "In the meantime, Rachel needs full-time help, around the clock. If she goes home alone, there's a high risk of relapse." Daniel didn't hesitate. "She's not going home alone. She's coming with me." Rachel's eyes widened. Your place, but I've got a rental in Bayview, room for all of us. I was planning to expand it into a business space, but I'll find another way. You need rest, and the boys need stability. The deputy studied him. You're making a big commitment. Daniel looked at Rachel, then over his shoulder at the sleeping boys. I walked away once, he said. I'll never do it again. There was a long silence. Then the deputy nodded. I'll notify the court. Just as he turned to leave, Daniel's phone buzzed again. Voicemail unknown number. He pressed play. A distorted voice came through. If you think this is over, Daniel, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Vanessa. Daniel stared at the phone in his hand long after the voicemail ended. The cold venom in Vanessa's voice clung to him like smoke, an invisible threat that seemed to snake through every corner of the ICU room. Rachel watched him from the bed, eyes wide with concern, her breathing shallow. She won't stop, she said quietly. Daniel pocketed the phone. Then neither will I. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, then glanced at the triplets, still dozing. I have to go to the courthouse. I'll be back soon. With answers, with protection. You just rest. Rachel nodded, though her fingers tightened around his hand before letting go. By the time Daniel arrived at the courthouse, adrenaline was the only thing keeping him upright. He marched into the family court office, waved the evidence-laden flash drive, and demanded an immediate audience with the emergency duty judge. To his surprise, the clerk moved quickly. An hour later, he was standing in front of Judge Prentice, a silver-haired woman with a reputation for no-nonsense decisions and a deep belief in protecting children. Across the aisle, to his shock, stood Vanessa Morris, already dressed in a tailored navy suit flanked by a high-priced attorney. Judge Prentice reviewed the files silently, her gaze sharp beneath wire-rimmed glasses. Ms. Morris, I see here you filed for interim guardianship based on parental abandonment and concerns of welfare. Yet I also have a sworn affidavit from the hospital, a paternity match, and a digital audio file in which you appear to confess ulterior motives and falsified claims. Vanessa's lawyer cut in, voice syrupy. Your Honor, the audio is unverified. Daniel stepped forward. The voice print matches. I ran it through forensic software overnight, and the boys, all three, want to stay with their parents. Judge Prentice held up a hand. Enough. She looked straight at Vanessa. I take the integrity of this court seriously, Ms. Morris. Your actions may warrant a separate investigation. As of this moment, I am granting Mr. Whitaker temporary sole custody, with shared guardianship to Ms. Carter upon medical release. All visitation with the children is suspended for any third parties unless cleared through a child welfare advocate. Vanessa's face went pale. Judge Prentice turned to Daniel. You're their father now. Fully. Don't waste it. I won't, he said, emotion thick in his throat. As he left the courtroom, Daniel's phone buzzed again, this time a text message from an unknown number. You may have won the courtroom, but I know something about Rachel you don't, and when you learn it, let's see if you still stay. Daniel stared at the message, dread blooming in his chest. He raced back to the hospital, heart pounding, questions swirling. What else could Vanessa possibly know? When he arrived, the nurse at the ICU gave him a strange look. She's awake, she said, and she's asking for you, but she's crying, hard. Daniel rushed in. Rachel sat upright, eyes red, fingers trembling. I need to tell you something, she whispered, about the night you left, about what I never told you. Her voice cracked. There was another man, just once. I thought you were gone forever. Daniel froze. The words hung in the air like a blade suspended over everything they had just rebuilt. Rachel sat motionless, tears running silently down her cheeks, her hand clenched around the bedsheet as if it were the only thing tethering her to reality. I didn't mean to lie to you, she whispered, but I was scared. After you left, I broke. Daniel sat slowly beside her, his mind reeling. What are you saying, Rachel? She met his eyes, her voice barely audible. It was just one night, a mistake. A man I met at a grief support group. I never even saw him again. And a few weeks later I found out I was pregnant." Daniel's breath caught. Rachel reached for his hand, her own trembling. "I was going to tell you, I was. But then you were gone, and when the boys were born, I convinced myself they were yours, because I wanted them to be. They look like you, they act like you, but I never got a paternity test. I never wanted to know for sure." Silence fell like a curtain between them. Daniel pulled his hand back, staring at the floor. "So you don't know?" he asked. "Not for sure?" She shook her head. "No, but I raised them as yours. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every Christmas. You were the one I loved, Daniel. Not him, not ever." Daniel stood, running a hand through his hair. His chest felt tight, like he couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you tell me when I came back?" "Because I was afraid it would change the way you looked at them," she said. "Or at me." Daniel turned away, the hospital monitors beeping steadily behind him. "Do you want to know?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he finally said. "I don't know what to feel right now." The door creaked open softly, and Liam poked his head in. "Is Mom okay?" Daniel wiped his face quickly and turned. "Yeah, buddy, she's awake." The boy ran in, followed closely by Ethan and Noah. They rushed to Rachel's side, hugging her with all the love they could fit in their tiny arms. Daniel watched them, watched how they looked at her, how they loved her, and how much he loved them. Biology didn't change any of that, not really, but the doubt now curled in the back of his mind like smoke. Later, when the boys had fallen asleep beside their mother, Daniel stepped into the hallway. He pulled out his phone and stared at the number that had sent him the text. Another message buzzed in. "If you want proof, I have it. DNA, signed, sealed, ready to destroy your fairy tale." Daniel's fingers hovered over the reply button. Then he typed one word. "Where?" He hit send. The reply came within seconds, as if Vanessa had been waiting, watching. 33 Holleridge Drive, tonight. Come alone. Daniel stared at the message, his gut twisting. Holleridge was on the far edge of town, quiet, secluded, half the homes foreclosed and forgotten. If this was a trap, he was walking right into it. But if there really was a DNA test, if there really was a file that held the truth about the boy's paternity, he had to see it with his own eyes. He scribbled a quick note for Rachel, lying it beside her pillow. "Went out. Be back soon. Love you. D." Then he slipped out into the night. Holleridge Drive was darker than he remembered. The streetlights flickered dimly, and weeds curled up from cracked sidewalks. The house at number 33 was a rundown Victorian, paint peeling, windows boarded except for one faintly glowing upstairs room. He knocked. Nothing. Then the door creaked open on its own. He stepped inside cautiously, the wooden floor groaning beneath his feet. "Vanessa," he called. "I'm upstairs." Her voice echoed faintly. End of the hall. The staircase moaned as he climbed. The hallway was lined with dusty family portraits, none of them Rachel's. Vanessa's own family, perhaps, or props, he couldn't tell. He reached the last room. The door was ajar. Inside, Vanessa sat on a desk chair, a thick manila envelope in her lap. Her hair was down now, makeup faded, her face tired but triumphant. "You came," she said, as though they were meeting for coffee. Daniel stepped inside slowly. "Is that it?" he asked, nodding to the envelope. She nodded. "DNA test from a private clinic, one you never knew about." "How'd you get it?" Her smile turned sly. "Rachel and I used to be closer than she admits. She confided things, fears. She wasn't sure which man was the father, and after you left, she let me help. I kept the test. She didn't want to see it." Daniel stared at the envelope. "And you've been sitting on it all this time?" Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because I wanted to see if you'd love them regardless. But also, because part of me wanted to hurt her, to show her that you only came back because you thought they were yours." Daniel stepped forward. "Give it to me." She hesitated, then slowly extended the envelope. He took it, Heart pounding, hands trembling, he opened it. Inside, a single document, lab certified, 3 names, 3 percentages, and beside each, 0.00% probability of paternity. The room tilted. Daniel stared at the page, numb. Not his, not one. Vanessa watched him, eyes shining with cold satisfaction. Now you know. But Daniel didn't speak. He just stared at the paper, hearing their voices in his head, their laughter, their questions, the way they called him Dad without hesitation. And then he tore the envelope in half. Vanessa gasped. "What are you doing?" "I'm doing what a father does," Daniel said, his voice steel. "I'm choosing them, no matter what this says." He turned, walked out, and never looked back. But in the shadows of the room, Vanessa's smile returned. She reached into a drawer, pulling out a second envelope, the real one. Daniel drove through the sleeping city with the windows down, the shredded pieces of the fake DNA test in the passenger seat beside him. The cool air bit at his skin, but he barely noticed. His mind was a storm of relief, anger, confusion, and resolve. He had chosen. It didn't matter what the paper said. Those boys were his, in every way that counted. But Vanessa still had more cards to play. He could feel it. When he arrived back at the hospital, the ICU was quiet, bathed in soft blue light. Rachel was awake, sitting up slightly, the triplets fast asleep beside her again. Her eyes met his, weary and unsure. "You saw her," she said softly. He nodded, walking slowly toward the bed. "She gave me a test." Rachel's face paled. "And?" Daniel crouched beside her, brushing her hair back gently. "I tore it up." Her breath caught. "You didn't read it?" "I did," he said. "It said I'm not the father." Rachel's eyes flooded. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." "Stop," he whispered. "I don't care. I don't care what science says. I love them. I love you. That's all that matters." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing silently. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her as tightly as her fragile body allowed. "They're mine, Rachel. No one gets to tell me otherwise." From the hallway, the night nurse peeked in and smiled at the sight before gently shutting the door. But miles away, in a quiet little cafe still open for the night shift, Vanessa sipped a glass of wine, her phone glowing in the dim light. She laid out the real DNA test on the table, smoothing its creases. It was the original document, signed, dated, verifiable. And this one told a very different story. 2 of the boys, Ethan and Liam, showed 99.99% paternity match, but Noah, 0. She stared at the results, then slid them back into the folder, tucking it away in her leather briefcase. "You always were good at tearing up lies, Daniel," she murmured to herself. "But how will you handle the truth?" Back at the hospital, Daniel sat beside the sleeping boys, brushing the hair from Noah's forehead. "You saved me, kiddo," he whispered. "All 3 of you did." Noah stirred but didn't wake. Rachel looked at Daniel, voice quiet. "Are you sure?" He kissed her hand. "They're mine." End of story. But it wasn't the end, because Vanessa wasn't done, and neither was the truth. And somewhere, out there, a man Rachel hadn't seen in over 8 years, the other man, was about to come looking for the son he never knew he had. The next few days passed in a delicate rhythm of quiet care and cautious hope. Rachel remained in recovery, slowly regaining strength. The triplets were relocated from the ICU lounge to a nearby hotel room Daniel had rented, one with a kitchenette and 2 queen beds, just big enough for all 3 boys to sleep curled together. Daniel stayed up each night, pacing, watching over them, afraid that if he closed his eyes, everything he had rebuilt would vanish. But even in the stillness, something pulsed just beneath the surface, a shadow Daniel couldn't shake. Vanessa was gone. No more texts. No more threats. But Daniel knew better than to believe she had truly disappeared. She was calculating, and quiet was never the end of a storm. It was just the warning. On the 4th morning, as Daniel prepared breakfast, toast and scrambled eggs. Liam asked, "Are we going to stay with you forever?" Daniel knelt down, wiping egg off Ethan's cheek. "Yes," he said. "Forever sounds about right." Noah, silent as usual, looked up at him with something unreadable in his eyes. Daniel smiled and ruffled his hair. But the moment lingered, unsettling. Later that day, as Rachel sat propped up in bed, Daniel came to visit with paperwork. "Discharge in 3 days. You'll have follow-up appointments, therapy, prescriptions." He stopped when he noticed her distant gaze. "What's wrong?" She looked at him carefully. "Something's been bothering you." "What is it?" Daniel hesitated, then sat beside her. "Noah's been quiet, quieter than usual, and ever since I tore up that test, something's been bothering me too." Rachel's eyes dropped to her hands. "Daniel, there's something I never told you, something I never told anyone." He waited. "The man from the support group. I didn't even know his last name. It was just one night. I was broken after you left. I never expected to see him again, but 2 weeks ago, before I collapsed, I got a letter." Daniel tensed. "A letter?" She nodded slowly. "From him. He found me. Said he'd always wondered. Said he saw a photo online, one of the boys at a school event. Said one of them looked just like his father." Daniel's mouth went dry. "Noah?" Rachel nodded. "I didn't want to tell you. Not after you came back. Not when you looked at them like they were everything." Daniel stood and walked to the window, pressing his hands against the cool glass. "What did the letter say? That he was coming to town?" Daniel turned slowly. "Does he know about Noah for sure?" She shook her head. "I never responded. I was afraid. I didn't want to lose everything." Daniel's voice dropped. "Did Vanessa know about the letter?" Rachel looked up, eyes wide. I think she did." Daniel's thoughts began to spiral. "She's not trying to take them away anymore. She's waiting." "For what?" Rachel whispered. Daniel's voice was a whisper too. "For him to show up." That night, Daniel sat in the hotel room with the boys asleep once more, the television humming softly with a muted cartoon rerun. He didn't watch. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on the manila envelope in his lap, the real DNA test Rachel had given him earlier that day, the one Vanessa had tried to use as a weapon. He hadn't looked at it. Not yet. His hands trembled as he opened the flap. One by one he read the names. Liam Whitaker, 99.99% match. Ethan Whitaker, 99.99% match. Noah Carter, 0.00%. Daniel leaned back against the couch, the paper slipping from his hands. There it was. The truth, cold and clinical. 2 sons of his blood and one who wasn't. But he remembered Noah's tiny hand reaching for him the first day they met, the way he'd looked at him with quiet, questioning eyes, the way he always stood just behind his brothers, close but slightly apart, like he was waiting for permission to belong. And Daniel had given it, without knowing, without hesitation. Noah was his. He didn't need DNA to tell him what his heart already knew. Still, the storm was approaching. Rachel had mentioned the man might arrive soon, and Vanessa, she'd gone quiet far too easily. That only confirmed Daniel's fear. This wasn't over. She was waiting for someone else to do the damage, and that someone could knock on their door at any moment. The next morning, as Daniel helped Rachel into the wheelchair to take her home, he noticed a man standing across the parking lot. Tall, broad-shouldered, early 40s, watching. When their eyes met, the man gave a faint, polite nod. Anne turned to walk away. Rachel noticed too. Her breath caught. "It's him," she whispered. Daniel pushed the wheelchair faster. That afternoon, back at the house, he locked every door, called a lawyer, made plans for contingencies. He even looked up private security, something he never thought he'd need. Rachel sat with the boys, reading aloud from an old book. Daniel watched them from the hallway, hidden from view. Noah sat closest to her, head resting on her shoulder. When Rachel looked up and met Daniel's eyes, he saw it in her face. Guilt, fear, and hope, all woven together. They couldn't keep this hidden forever. If the man had already found them once, he'd do it again. And next time, he might not be content with a glance from across the street. He might come knocking with papers, with rights, with a claim. And if he did, Daniel didn't know what would happen. But deep down, he already knew one thing. He wasn't letting anyone take Noah from him. Not now. Not ever. Even if the law said otherwise. That evening, after dinner and story time, Daniel tucked the boys into bed while Rachel rested on the couch, her breathing easier now but still fragile. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the kitchen refrigerator and the soft rustle of wind outside. It was the kind of silence Daniel used to crave. Now it unnerved him. After the boys were asleep, he stepped outside into the backyard with a cup of coffee and his phone. He dialed the lawyer he'd spoken with earlier in the day. "Daniel Whitaker," he said when the line picked up. "I need to talk guardianship. Urgent." The voice on the other end, a steady, older man named Paul Gregory, responded calmly. "I've looked over the preliminary files you sent. You have a strong case for Liam and Ethan. Full custody is practically yours already. But Noah..." There was a pause. "Noah's situation is delicate." Daniel nodded slowly, even though no one could see him. "Because I'm not his biological father." "Correct," Paul said. "And if the biological father chooses to pursue legal action for parental rights, the courts will likely recognize it, especially if he has clean records, stable income, and demonstrates interest." Daniel's stomach twisted. "What if I contest it? What if I want to keep all three together?" "You can contest," Paul replied. "But if the biological father pushes for paternity and Rachel acknowledges the truth, which she already has, it'll be hard. Very hard." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "There has to be a way." "There is one," Paul said after a pause. "Adoption." Daniel's breath caught. "If the biological father waives his rights or disappears, you could legally adopt Noah. It would make him yours, permanently. No court could challenge it later." Daniel stared at the night sky. Stars blinked faintly behind the city haze. "Would he ever agree to that?" Daniel asked. "The biological father?" "I've seen it happen," Paul said, "but it depends on the man." Daniel hung up, his mind racing. Inside, Rachel had fallen asleep on the couch, one arm resting protectively across her abdomen. Daniel pulled a blanket over her and sat down next to her, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. And then, as if summoned by the thought, the doorbell rang. Daniel was on his feet instantly, his body tense. He looked through the peephole. There, standing calmly in the porch light, was the man from the parking lot. Tall, confident, no longer watching from a distance. This time, he was here to talk. Daniel opened the door slowly. The man nodded. "Daniel Whitaker?" "Yes." "My name's Sean Keller," he said, his voice low and even. "I believe I might be the biological father of one of your sons." Daniel didn't flinch. "You picked the wrong time," he said, stepping out and closing the door behind him. But Sean wasn't aggressive. He held up his hands. "I'm not here to make a scene. I just want the truth." Daniel stared at him, trying to read the man's face. "Then come back tomorrow," he said coldly. "Because tonight he's sleeping, and I'm not going to let you wake up a child who thinks the world is finally safe." Sean looked past him, toward the window glowing softly from within. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow." He walked away. But this time Daniel knew. The real battle was about to begin. The next morning dawned cloudy, the sky a heavy gray that mirrored the unease in Daniel's chest. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, sipping weak coffee, her hands still shaking slightly as she scrolled through old messages on her phone. The boys were still asleep, curled together like a litter of cubs in their shared bed. For one last moment, everything was quiet. Then the knock came. 3 slow, steady taps. Daniel opened the door to find Sean Keller standing there again, this time dressed in a simple button-down and jeans, a man trying to appear harmless. He held no papers, no lawyer, just a hesitant look in his eyes. "I'm not here to take him," Sean said before Daniel could speak. "Not today, I need to see him, talk to her, and figure out what this all means." Daniel didn't move. "Why now?" Sean looked past him, eyes filled with regret. "Because I didn't know. Not until I saw that photo online, and then I saw his face. I knew." Rachel appeared behind Daniel, weak but upright. Her voice cut through the air like glass. "Let him in." Daniel turned. "Are you sure?" She nodded, her face pale but her eyes steady. "I have to face this." Sean entered cautiously, his eyes flicking toward every photo on the walls. Pictures of birthdays, messy kitchen moments, the triplets smiling on a swing set. Daniel noticed the slight twitch in his jaw when he saw Noah, mid-laugh, resting on Daniel's shoulders. They sat at the table, the three of them. No lawyers, no shouting, just history and heartache. Rachel started first. "It was one night. I didn't tell you because I didn't know. I thought Daniel was the father of all three." Sean nodded slowly. "I don't blame you. I disappeared too. I never gave you a way to reach me." Daniel sat silently, eyes fixed on Sean. "What do you want?" Sean looked at him. "I want to know him. Not as his father, not yet, but as someone who might be part of his life." Daniel's fingers tightened around his coffee mug. "He's 7. He already has a life, a father, brothers, a home." "I'm not asking to take him," Sean said. "I just want the chance to know if I should be in it. If I can help, support, be part of his story, not rewrite it." Rachel closed her eyes, pain washing over her face. "He doesn't know anything. He believes you're all they've ever had." Sean turned to Daniel. "Would you let me talk to him? Not about the truth, just as a friend?" Daniel didn't answer right away. His entire body screamed no. But then he thought of Noah, the quiet boy with wide eyes, always watching, always wondering. Maybe a part of him already knew. Finally, Daniel nodded. "One visit, supervised, if he's comfortable." Sean's shoulders lowered, relief softening his expression. "Thank you," he said quietly. But as the three sat there in the silence that followed, no one noticed the black car parked across the street. Inside, Vanessa watched through binoculars, her phone recording the meeting from a distance. And beside her, a man in a sharp suit murmured, "If that's the biological father and he's cooperating, we may have a case to remove custody entirely." Vanessa's smile returned. "Then let's break the whole family apart, one truth at a time." Later that afternoon, Noah sat cross-legged in the backyard, his favorite robot clutched in one hand, a half-built Lego set spread out in the grass beside him. Daniel stood at the kitchen window, watching. The boy had been quieter than usual since breakfast, not sad, just distant, like a thought was tugging at the edge of his mind, and he hadn't yet found the words to name it. Rachel walked up beside Daniel, her steps slow but steadier. "He knows something's different," she murmured. Daniel nodded. He always notices the things no one else does. Down in the yard, the back gate creaked open. Sean stepped inside, his movements tentative. He paused when Noah looked up, but the boy didn't run or frown. He simply tilted his head. "Hi," Sean said. "Mind if I sit?" Noah shrugged, then scooted to the side. Daniel moved to the porch, arms crossed, eyes locked on the scene, close enough to step in if needed. Rachel stayed inside, fingers gripped tightly around the counter. Sean lowered himself onto the grass. "That's a cool robot," Noah nodded. "His name's Turbo." "Turbo, huh? Strong name." The boy smiled faintly, then looked at him again. "Are you a friend of my mom?" Sean hesitated. "A long time ago. I didn't know she had 3 amazing kids." Noah looked down. "People say we look alike, my brothers. But sometimes I think I don't." Sean blinked, surprised. "Why's that?" Noah shrugged. "I feel different sometimes. I don't know why." Sean's throat tightened. Different doesn't mean anything bad. Sometimes it just means your story started somewhere else, but it's still yours. The boy studied him carefully, then said, "Are you going to come back again?" Sean looked toward the porch, meeting Daniel's eyes. There was a long pause. Then he turned back to Noah and said something Daniel didn't expect. "I'll only come back if you want me to." Noah was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded once. Sean stood. "Thanks for letting me talk to you." As he left the yard, Daniel met him halfway. "I meant what I said," Sean told him. "I'm not here to take him, but if you ever need anything for him, school, health, future, I'll help," quietly. Daniel studied him, his jaw tight. "You'd be okay never telling him?" Sean's expression flickered. "It's not about what I want anymore. It's about what's best for him." And with that, he walked away. That evening, Rachel rested while the boys played inside. Daniel stepped onto the porch, watching the stars emerge in the dusky sky. His phone buzzed, a message. "From family court, emergency filing alert." He opened it, his stomach dropping. "Petition to review custody of minor children, filed by Vanessa Morris with statement of interest by Sean Keller." Daniel's blood ran cold. She had twisted it. Somehow she had made it look like Sean was fighting for custody, and the court had accepted the filing. Rachel appeared at the door, pale. "What is it?" Daniel handed her the phone. She covered her mouth. "We're going to lose them," she whispered. Daniel sat in the dim kitchen, long after the boys had gone to sleep, the court notice still glowing on the phone screen in front of him. Rachel was curled on the couch, drained, her body trembling from exhaustion and fear. Every breath she took felt like it might break her. The peace they had fought so hard to build was now hanging by a thread, and Vanessa had found the scissors. Across the table sat the family lawyer, Paul Gregory, who had come the moment he received Daniel's late-night call. He adjusted his glasses, his face unusually grim. "She filed it clean," Paul said, tapping the screen. "No direct custody claim from Sean. Just a statement of interest, which allows the court to treat him as a third-party advocate for the child's welfare. It looks innocent, but Vanessa knows how to use it." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "So she's using Sean's name, whether he meant to or not." "Exactly. And if she can convince the judge that Noah is being kept from his biological father, or worse, raised under misleading paternity, she can argue it constitutes emotional risk. She's not trying to win custody herself anymore. She's trying to tear yours apart." Rachel looked up, her eyes glassy. "We could lose them all, couldn't we?" Paul didn't answer immediately. "Yes," he finally said. "If they think there's instability in the home, if they believe there's deception or a lack of medical or emotional safety for the boys, the court could split them, give you the twins, give Noah to the system or to Sean." Daniel stood, pacing, heart pounding. "No, that won't happen." "There's one option," Paul added, "but it's extreme. You'd have to formally file for adoption of Noah before the hearing. Push it fast with Rachel's consent and Sean's waiver of rights. If all three are under the same legal guardianship by then, it makes their case weaker." Rachel sat up straighter. "But that means we'd have to tell Noah everything." Daniel nodded slowly. "And hope he still wants me after." Silence filled the kitchen. The next morning, Daniel sat on the edge of Noah's bed as sunlight crept in through the blinds. The boy blinked up at him, half asleep. "Hey, buddy," Daniel said gently. "Can we talk?" Noah sat up, rubbing his eyes. Daniel took a breath. "There's something important I need you to know, something about where you came from." Noah stared at him, already sensing the weight behind the words. "You know how sometimes you feel a little different from Liam and Ethan?" Daniel began softly. "There's a reason for that." Noah didn't say anything. His eyes didn't leave Daniel's. "You have a different biological father," Daniel said, "but that doesn't change how I feel. I've been your dad since the day I met you. And I want to keep being that forever. But for that to happen, I need to adopt you." Noah looked down, then back up. "Will I still be your son?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Always." Noah blinked, his voice barely a whisper. "Then I want that too." Daniel pulled him close, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. But outside, parked across the street again, Vanessa's car waited. And inside, she was already preparing her next move. 2 days later, the adoption petition was filed, rushed, notarized, every document signed with trembling hands and sleepless hearts. Rachel's medical discharge was granted just in time. Paul, their lawyer, moved mountains to get the hearing bumped up. Everything hinged on the upcoming court date, now only hours away. The house was filled with tense silence, save for the soft laughter of the boys, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond their understanding. Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a thick folder in front of him. Inside, the adoption papers, medical records, school files, character references, evidence of every scraped knee, bedtime story, and whispered, "I love you," over the last few weeks. He looked up at Rachel, who was sitting in the doorway wrapped in a shawl, her hands gripping a cup of tea that had long gone cold. "We're doing the right thing," Daniel said, though his voice trembled. Rachel nodded. "I know." But her eyes betrayed the fear, because doing the right thing didn't always mean winning. That afternoon, Sean returned, this time invited. He entered the home respectfully, pausing in the doorway until Daniel nodded him in. They sat in the living room while the boys played outside. "I never agreed to fight you," Sean said quietly. "That wasn't the point of that statement I signed." "I know," Daniel replied, "but Vanessa used it, twisted it." Sean looked toward the window where Noah was climbing the backyard tree. "He's everything I would have wanted in a son, but I missed it. I wasn't there, and he already has a dad." Daniel watched him closely. "Then help us protect him. Sign the waiver. Let the court know you support the adoption." Sean didn't answer right away. Then he stood, pulled a folded document from his coat, and set it gently on the table. "I already did," he said. Daniel stared. I signed it yesterday. And I called the court this morning. I told them I won't be appearing. Noah's where he belongs." Rachel covered her mouth, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. Sean stepped toward the door, pausing to look back one last time. "I'll stay out of the way, unless he ever wants to find me when he's older, if he wants to." Daniel nodded. "I'll leave that door open, when the time's right." Sean left without another word. The house was quiet again. Later that night, Daniel tucked the boys in. Liam was already half asleep. Ethan mumbled something about dinosaurs, but Noah sat up looking at Daniel with clear, calm eyes. "You're still my dad, right?" Daniel smiled and kissed his forehead. "Always." Outside, the moonlight streamed through the trees. But as Daniel turned off the light and stepped into the hallway, Paul's text arrived on his phone. "Vanessa just filed a motion to intervene. Claims Sean's waiver was coerced. She has a witness ready to testify. Get ready for war." The courtroom was sterile and cold the next morning, its high windows letting in a dull, overcast light that felt more like judgment than warmth. Daniel sat at the petitioner's table with Rachel beside him, pale but composed. Paul stood ready, flipping through his notes with precise efficiency. Across the aisle, Vanessa entered like a queen arriving at a chessboard, hair pulled back in a sleek bun, sharp suit pressed, eyes sharp as razors. And with her, a man no one had seen before, a smug-looking figure in a blazer and wire-rimmed glasses, holding a briefcase like a loaded weapon. The bailiff called for silence. The judge, Prentice again, the same no-nonsense woman from before, took her seat. Her gaze swept over both sides with keen alertness. "We're here today for a review of guardianship and custody concerning minors Liam, Ethan, and Noah Carter Whitaker," she began. "Mr. Whitaker, you have filed for full legal adoption of Noah Carter, with biological father Sean Keller's signed waiver on file. Ms. Morris has filed a motion to intervene, challenging said waiver. Let's proceed." Paul stood first. "Your Honor, the waiver in question was signed voluntarily, submitted ahead of the hearing and followed proper legal channels. Mr. Keller is not present today because he respects the existing family unit and believes this adoption is in the best interest of the child." Judge Prentice nodded, then turned to Vanessa. "Ms. Morris, on what grounds do you claim coercion?" Vanessa rose slowly, oozing poise. Your Honor, I have a signed statement and live testimony indicating Mr. Keller was pressured into signing that waiver without proper counsel. Furthermore, I believe Mr. Whitaker has concealed material truths from the court, including the child's knowledge of his own paternity and the psychological impact of that concealment. Paul objected. No evidence supports that claim, and there's no legal requirement for a minor of that age to be informed during adoption proceedings. Vanessa's eyes glittered. Not legally, but ethically. Judge Prentice raised a hand. You mentioned testimony. Bring in your witness. The courtroom doors opened and Daniel's stomach dropped. Sean walked in, but something was off. His face was tight, jaw clenched. He avoided Daniel's eyes. Paul stood. Your Honor, this witness was previously aligned with the petitioner. We request clarity on his shift of position. The judge nodded. Mr. Keller, you may speak. Sean stepped forward slowly, glancing once at Vanessa before facing the judge. His voice was low. I signed that waiver and I meant it, but Vanessa came to me afterward, told me I might be liable for abandonment, that I could be seen as negligent if I didn't at least ask questions. Paul rose. Your Honor, this is manipulation. Coercion in reverse. Sean hesitated. I'm not here to claim custody, but I am asking the court to pause, to wait until Noah knows the truth. Vanessa smiled faintly. The judge turned to Daniel. Mr. Whitaker, how do you respond? Daniel stood slowly. I respect Sean, he said, voice trembling with controlled fury. But Noah already knows the truth. I told him, and he chose me. He said, "You're still my dad, right?" And I said yes. That's all the truth he needs. The judge leaned back. This court will recess for 1 hour, she said, while I review all documentation, including the child's interview notes, medical history, and both parties' filings. The gavel struck. As the courtroom emptied, Sean stepped toward Daniel, guilt etched across his face. I didn't want to do this, he era na transmissão de mensagem. I didn't want to do this, Sean whispered, barely able to meet Daniel's eyes. Daniel stared at him, the weight of betrayal pressing hard against his chest. Then why did you? Sean glanced over his shoulder. Vanessa was busy talking to her attorney. She said if I didn't raise a question, she'd file a negligence report with my old employer. Said she could bury me under red tape. I panicked. Daniel's jaw clenched. You gave her exactly what she needed. Sean looked down, ashamed. I never meant to hurt Noah. You didn't hurt him, Daniel said coldly. You hurt the people keeping him whole. Sean tried to reply, but Daniel walked away, every step echoing with the fury he kept tightly leashed. Back in the hallway, Rachel sat on a bench near the vending machines, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She got to him, didn't she? She asked quietly. Daniel nodded. He caved. Rachel's eyes welled with tears. She's turning him into a weapon. No, Daniel said firmly. Not if I have anything to say about it. He looked at the time. 45 minutes until the judge returned. That wasn't enough to fix everything, but maybe it was enough to shine a light on Vanessa's real game. Daniel stepped outside into the cold, dialing Paul as he walked. I need every document we have that links Vanessa to social service fraud, every misstep, every manipulation. Pull her public record, professional history, anything. Paul didn't hesitate. Already ahead of you. I've got 3 old complaints filed under her maiden name. She's not clean. Good, Daniel said. We need to prove she's not here for Noah. She's here for revenge. Paul paused. That might not be enough, but there's one more card you haven't played. Daniel frowned. What? Let Noah speak. Daniel froze. Paul continued. He's 7. That's old enough in this state to be heard in chambers if the judge agrees. It's rare, but not impossible. Daniel looked back at the courthouse doors, his thoughts racing. Could he really ask that of Noah? To walk into a room, sit across from a judge and speak his truth? Would that scar him or save him? Back inside, Daniel found Rachel in the quiet room where the boys were waiting. They had brought books, crayons, snacks, but the tension was everywhere. Noah sat in the corner, sketching silently. Daniel knelt in front of him. "Noah," he said gently, "can I talk to you about something?" The boy looked up. "Is this about the people in suits?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Sort of. They're trying to figure out what's best for you, and the truth is, no one knows that better than you." Noah was quiet. Daniel continued, "You don't have to, but if you wanted to, you could tell the judge how you feel, about your life, about me, about us." Noah looked away for a long time. Then, "Would she believe me?" Daniel nodded. "I think she'd want to." Noah took a breath. "Then, I want to." Daniel hugged him tightly. 15 minutes later, Paul approached Judge Prentice during the reconvening and made the formal request. The judge looked at Daniel, at Noah, then back at Vanessa. "I'll allow it," she said. Vanessa's smile faltered, and for the first time all day, Daniel felt something else rise in his chest. Hope. Noah sat alone in the judge's chambers, his small legs swinging just above the floor, his hands folded neatly in his lap. Across from him, Judge Prentice regarded him with a gaze that was firm but kind. The room was warm and uncluttered, far from the intimidating courtroom. A gentle ticking clock filled the silence. "Noah," she said softly, "do you know why you're here today?" The boy nodded slowly. "Because people are fighting about where I belong." She tilted her head slightly. "And where do you belong?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the room, then settled on a framed photo on the judge's desk. Children's drawings, bright and chaotic. His voice was quiet, but clear when he spoke. "I live with my mum, and my brothers, and Daniel. He's my dad. Not like by blood, I guess, but in the real way." Judge Prentice leaned forward slightly. "Can you tell me what the real way means to you?" Noah smiled a little. "He makes pancakes with faces, and he helped me build a rocket that didn't fall apart. And when I got scared at night, he didn't tell me to be brave, he just stayed." There was a pause. "Did anyone ever tell you there's another man who might be your biological father?" Noah nodded. "Daniel did." "What did you think about that?" Noah shrugged. "I think it's okay, but that guy's not the one who reads me stories or holds me when I cry. That's my real dad." Judge Prentice smiled softly. "Thank you, Noah. You can go back now." As he left, Daniel met him in the hallway and scooped him into his arms. "You did great, kiddo." Noah buried his face in Daniel's neck. "I told her the truth." They returned to the courtroom. Judge Prentice entered minutes later and sat with the authority of someone who had heard enough. "I've reviewed the documents, the testimonies, and, most importantly, the voice of the child himself," she said. Vanessa stiffened. "The petition to intervene is denied." Rachel gasped, clutching Daniel's hand. "The waiver from Mr. Keller is hereby upheld. The adoption of Noah Carter by Daniel Whitaker is granted, effective immediately." Paul smiled wide. Daniel closed his eyes, exhaling the breath he'd been holding for days. Judge Prentice continued, her tone clipped. "As for Ms. Vanessa Morris, a formal inquiry will be opened into her conduct. Further allegations of misconduct in family matters will be investigated separately." Vanessa stood slowly, her face pale. She looked directly at Daniel, something between hatred and disbelief flickering in her eyes. "It's over," he said quietly. "You lost." She turned and walked out without a word. Later, outside the courthouse, Daniel knelt before all three boys and Rachel. He held up the adoption certificate, eyes shining. "We did it," he whispered. Noah smiled. "So I'm really yours now?" Daniel nodded, choking back emotion. "Forever." Noah reached for his hand. "Can we go home?" Daniel looked up at Rachel, who was crying but radiant. "Yeah," he said, "let's go home." And for the first time in a long, long while, they finally knew they would never be separated again.